Hello, welcome to Nature Source Care. My name is Dr. Funda Goldman. I'm a naturopathic physician, and today I was going to talk about cooling beverages for hot times. And by hot times, I mean when somebody's dealing with rashes, skin rashes, hot flashes, inflammatory flare-ups, inflammation generally, anger, and even summertime, because all these things bring on extra heat in the mind and in the body. Note of caution first, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. For any symptoms that are severe or worsening, please contact a qualified healthcare professional. And it's always important to determine the root cause of any disease to develop a comprehensive treatment plan, so please keep that in mind. The other thing is that I'm going to be presenting information here on individual herbs and foods that are used to cool down the body when need be. And also I'm going to be sharing some recipes, and actually almost all the information in this video is from my book called Drink to Your Health, Medicinal Teas, Juices, and Milks from Around the World. So if you're interested in more information on this topic, you might pick up a copy. It's available on Amazon. So a few words about Ayurveda generally. Ayurveda is traditional Indian medicine. This is something that I use a lot in my practice. It's over 5,000 years old, this paradigm of medicine, and it's primarily a medical paradigm of energy. So what's interesting and very useful is that different foods have different sorts of energy. So some foods can be heating and some foods can be cooling, for example, just very simply. And the other thing is that since it's a medical paradigm of energy, you have to kind of shift your mindset a bit and to think about people, diseases, states of health, actions, foods, all of it's energy. And so we're using energies to balance out energies of disease. Yeah. So the other thing about Ayurveda is that it actually has a very long and deep history in terms of understanding the effects of whole foods on the body and the mind. And the reason why is that in parallel with the medical part of history in India is that there was that deep history of yoga and meditation. And so essentially part of what they did was they would consume a food and then observe in their body and their mind what happens, how does it affect the body and the mind. And so that's how they developed a lot of this profound information about nutrition. And also very simply is that there are essentially three major types of energy when we're thinking about people and their constitution and their current state of health or disease. And these are Vata or wind, Pitta or fire, and kapha or earth. So there's basically three: Vata, Pitta, kapha, wind, fire, earth. So, and these elements in the world have different qualities, right? So Vata, wind, is light, clear, and moving, like the wind. Pitta is fire. So fire is hot, it's spreading, it's intense. And when you have symptoms such as rashes on your skin, hot flashes, inflammation, flare-ups, excuse me, anger of the mind, so heat in the mind, or summertime, these all involve heat and spreading and intense nature, right? And then the last one is kapha earth. So kapha earth people and or symptoms tend to be heavy, still, and cold. So the main thing that we're going to be dealing with when we talk about how do we cool things down when things are too hot is this idea of too much pitta or too much fire. Okay, so keep that in your mind as we go through the drinks, beverages. So the first herb I wanted to discuss, which is a really great herb to cool down the body, is mint. And there are different species of mints, so spearmint, wintergreen mint, whatever. There's something else. There's another one, right? Anyway, it's slipping my mind. But mint is generally a very balanced herb. So you can use it for actually quite a few things, and I've listed here all the different sorts of things that mint can be used for. But essentially the reason why it's in this talk is that it's a cooling herb, and it's readily available around the world. You should be able to find mint no matter where you are in the world. So for the nervous system, mint actually lifts heaviness of the mental emotional sphere. So if there's tension, mental emotional tension, it helps to relax that. It's good for especially heating type of headaches. It clears the mind. It's an antispasmodic, so it's a relaxer to some degree. And it also helps to focus concentration. So I think it's in Japan. I think in Japan they actually waft mint smell into businesses to actually help their employees like focus better during work. I think it's Japan. It's also great for the respiratory system, so it helps with things like sore throats, laryngitis, bronchitis, colds, and flu. It helps with the cardiovascular system. It enhances circulation. It helps with GI problems like nervous digestion, gas, bloating, IBS, nausea, vomiting, intestinal spasms, diarrhea, and colic. So, and again, because mint is, a very gentle herb, you can actually use it to, just a teaspoon or two for children. You can give it to them if they're having digestive issues, for example. The GU system, so genitourinary system, painful burning urine can be helped with this herb. Skin, inflamed skin, allergic itching. So you can see because of the coolness, the energetic coolness of this herb, you can see how it's helping. Most of these things are related to too much heat in the body. Immune system, so colds, the female system, so morning sickness, menstrual congestion or pain, lack of menses can be helped with this. Nutritionally, it has bioflavonoids that can be helpful, build up like mucous membranes and stuff in the respiratory system. And as sort of a special function, it normalizes the flow of prana, which is sort of the vital energy all over the body. So again, that's another way of thinking. It helps with circulation, but not just sort of blood circulation or lymphatic circulation, but energetic circulation. General properties is a diaphoretic, so that means it induces sweating. So when you drink a cup of mint tea, for example, actually the first few minutes you may feel a little bit hot, like you're getting hotter. And then a sweat will break, because the blood is lifting to the surface of the skin and releasing heat. So that's part of how this herb works, is it brings blood from the center of the body to the surface, where the blood can basically release some of the heat and cool off by getting closer to the surface instead of staying in the center. Mint, most people really like mint, so it's a great flavoring in a lot of different cooking and beverages. And it's great for fever because it's a cooling herb. So there are contraindications with mint, so especially if you're in a high Vata state. So high Vata states, again, if you're interested, I have a whole video on Vata and dietary concerns or, information for Vata. But Vata people tend to be, they're like the wind, so they tend to be scattered. They can be overwhelmed easily. They can be in fear and overwhelmed. Physically, they tend to have symptoms that come and go, like the wind, cramping, that sort of thing, coldness, dryness, those sorts of things are indications that somebody has too much Vata or they have a Vata constitution. Also, things like epilepsy, that's a very Vata thing, because you're basically shaking like a leaf, right, when you go through an episode like that. So it's a very windy type of disease. Acid reflux, actually, mint, excuse me, and then I actually drank water, and I'm drinking water as I talk. I get some more. Okay, hopefully that'll help. Maybe not. But acid reflux can actually get worse with mint. Even though mint is a cooling herb, mint can actually destabilize the pyloric sphincter, so the valve that sits between the stomach and the lower small intestine, the lower intestines. And because that valve doesn't close properly, the food can kind of regurgitate up and bring acid, like bile acid, up into the stomach and up into the esophagus even. So if you have a lot of reflux, mint is not a good idea. Gallstones actually too, because again, it can start to push the liver and bile production a bit, which can rattle things if you're not careful with gallstones. Yeah, what else? Oh, it interacts with iron supplements. So if you're taking iron, if that's a really vital nutritional need for you, then be careful about how much mint you take. And spearmint is milder than peppermint. Oh, I think that's the one I was trying to remember, spearmint. But there you go. So that's mint. Now, you can take mint as a tea by itself, or so the second herb I'd like to discuss is hibiscus. This is also another herb you can find pretty much, I think, all over the world. In Asia, the Caribbean, here in the North America, you can find it. And hibiscus is another cooling herb. That's why it's in this talk. And it helps with like respiratory coughs. It helps with the GU system, so painful urination, cystitis, so similar to mint. It helps the skin, so it improves complexion and it supports hair growth. And then for women, it helps with painful menses and excessive bleeding. So excessive bleeding in Ayurveda is an indication that there's too much heat in the body, because that's actually kind of like what I mentioned, like with mint, bringing blood to the surface of the skin so that it can release heat as it passes through the skin. Another way to release heat is for women is that they have monthly menstruation. By losing that blood, they actually cools their body down. But there can be too much, and that can cause other things like anemia. So making sure that blood flow is balanced for the whole person. The other thing is that this herb has special properties. So it's actually, again, when I mentioned that in India they used to kind of meditate about, what are the effects of these herbs and foods on the body, mind, and even spirit, they found that hibiscus is an herb that tends to balance first and second chakra disorders. So if you're into chakras, this can be helpful. It enhances attention and meditation, and it potentizes mantras. So if you chant mantras, you can support that. And it purifies physically and spiritually. This herb is also linked with the Indian god Ganesha, who has an elephant head, and he's considered the sort of remover of obstacles. Or if you're heading down the wrong path, he'll put an obstacle in your path to prevent you from going down the wrong path. So kind of two ways about how he works. And then generally it's also good for fever because it's cooling and it's detoxifying. So this is the background on this specific herb. So here's a recipe using hibiscus flowers. If, hibiscus by itself, you want to kind of change it up once in a while. In my book, I call this recipe Lady's Cooling Moon Tea. Thinking about it now, that was probably too specific of a descriptor, although it's sort of poetic. Because the thing is, this is a cooling tea, so you don't have to be a lady to drink it. You don't have to have like issues with your menstrual cycle or menopause to drink it. It's actually good for anyone or time that Pitta is high, inflammation and fire is too high, not just women and gyne issues. So keep that in mind, despite the name I put on it for my book. So I should probably update that eventually in my book. But anyway, that's how it is at the moment. But anyway, what you do is you boil water, 2 cups, and then you add the herbs. So 2 teaspoons of rose petals, that's another cooling herb, half a teaspoon of hibiscus flowers, 1 teaspoon of coriander seeds, and an inch of cinnamon stick. So you turn off the heat and you cover it. And then you infuse it for 5 to 8 minutes before straining it. So infusing is different than decoction. That's a different method for making tea. So with decoction, you boil water, you put in the herbs, you cover it, and then you actively boil the herbs in water. So it's a more vigorous process. And that process is good for herbs that are harder to kind of open up. So things like roots and barks and stuff, berries sometimes. When the herb is harder and you need more time and heat to get the medicinal properties out. Infusion, though, when you have like light petals and leaves and stuff like this, you don't need a lot of heat and time. It's kind of overdoing it, and it'll turn the tea really bitter and it'll be hard to drink. This is actually pleasant. The recipes in my book are pleasant drinking teas besides being medicinal. So here it's just the infusion. You boil the water, turn off the heat, throw in the herbs, leave it there for a while, and then strain it. So this combination, again, can be helpful with Pitta type PMS symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, headache, and excessive bleeding. These are all signs, typically, of high states of Pitta, so especially in women. Menopausal hot flashes, that's another indication. Again, I mentioned, though, that it's not just for women, this recipe, and menstrual or... because the thing is, these herbs are not specifically for like the female gynecological system. These herbs are generally for decreasing heat, and they're good for increasing circulation in the body. So that's why it's helpful for women, but can be used generally for all kinds of issues in people. Yeah. The other thing you can do is if you want to make this even more of a cooling tea, rather than boil water and kind of cooking tea the way most people do, you can actually make a moon tea. So the way you do that is you take the water, you put the herbs and everything in it, you cover it, and then you leave that whole thing to sit under the moonlight overnight. And it's like, it's actually kind of fun. Like you wake up in the morning and you have this, and this is a beautiful color tea. Like it's a beautiful red, color. So it's kind of fun, fun to drink. That's why it's also for kids. Like if you're looking for something more natural to give them to drink in the summertime, rather than like artificially flavored colors and drink, colored drinks and stuff. This is like a nice alternative that still is sort of fun. Yeah. So so you can make a moon tea from this type of tea, because again, the herbs in here are very gentle, fragile, and so you don't need a lot of heat. Again, you can't really make a moon tea from herbs that are really hard and dense and need that extra heat and time to open up. So you can make a moon tea from this if you want. So one more thing that's helpful with decreasing heat in the body is cucumber. And cucumber, it's actually one of the foods in Ayurveda that's sort of used as a emergency cooling agent. So the 3 that come to mind are cucumbers, coconut, and cilantro. So when in doubt, if you like one of those, you can kind of use that more in your cooking or beverages or whatever, because they're all cooling in nature and to really get that heat down fast. But cucumber as a food can help again with the GU system. So it's a diuretic. It helps to get rid of extra water on the body. It helps with skin conditions because it is cooling in nature. It helps with an immune system because it's an anti-inflammatory. It does have some nutritional things such as phosphorus, manganese, zinc, and nickel. if you're looking to add more of that in your diet. And as I mentioned, it's used as an emergency inflammation high pitta condition food in Ayurveda. And then here's the nutritional information if you're interested. There's not much to it, a few carbs and a few calories, but again, it's mostly water. But again, you can use it in all sorts of ways. So one of the ways you can use it is you can make cucumber milk, and this is actually very tasty. So what you do is you take a cup of milk, and you can choose whichever type you prefer, and then you take a half to a full cup of cucumber, and then you want to peel it if it has the hard waxy surface. Some cucumbers have that, but if it's a soft skin, you can just throw the whole thing in. And optionally, you can also throw in here 2 tablespoons of grated coconut. So I mentioned coconut is another emergency cooling agent in Ayurveda. And if you want, you can put like a teaspoon of turbinado or natural sugar, maybe honey, that sort of thing. And the coconut and the sweetener are optional. But what you do is you throw all this in the blender and you blend it until it's smooth. So just, spin it around for a minute or two. It's extremely cooling. It's actually another very tasty beverage. So especially if you've been out, on a hot day, outside all day, you can use that. But if it can be very cooling and very heavy, so if you're closer to cold weather, I wouldn't drink this in the winter time. And I also wouldn't drink this if you have high kapha conditions, so things like cold and congestions, because kapha is earth energy. So kapha type conditions tend to be like heavy, mucusy. Like if you have seasonal allergies and your nose is all stuffed up, don't drink this. Or if you have a cold and you have some congestion in your lungs, your nose, your sinuses, don't drink this. It'll make it worse. But if things are hot and dry, this would be a nice way to balance those energies out. So this is more of a Vata Pitta condition beverage rather than good for kapha. But it's extremely cooling. So it's another thing, again, a different kind of recipe you might not see every day. But, if you're trying to get creative with how to use your groceries, this is maybe an option for you. So there you have it. I went into depth for a few different herbs and spices and groceries. Because again, in my mind as a naturopathic physician, food is medicine. And so there's always ways typically to use food to support or rebalance health. So again, if this kind of information or topic is interesting to you, you might take a look at my book. It's available on Amazon. But in any case, I want to thank you for your time and your attention. And as always, you take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.